A death tier list? I wonder whose idea this was.
Guys, we keep rating only a couple albums before the video ends. We need to make a tier list for a band with fewer albums so we can actually finish the list. Death is perfect.
Bro, we all know you only want to rate Death albums because you think Chuck is perfect.
Happy Little Accident, Barack, purely coincidental.
7 albums. It's going to be difficult, but we ain't quitting before we're done this time.
Boys, I'm finna handle the tier list this time. I don't trust either of you for this. First record is Scream Bloody Gore.
Hold up. We need to talk about the demo tapes first.
Bro, we already have 7 albums to rate. We're skipping the fucking demo tapes.
We may have skipped lame demos like No Life Till Leather in the Metallica videos, Barack, but these demos are too important not to rate.
No Life Till Leather is literally one of the most important demos of all time, Donald.
Blah, 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 rock. Obviously, Chuck's band was called Mantas first, but they changed their name to Death in 1984 because Chuck wanted to turn the death of his brother Frank in a car accident into something positive. Under the new name, they released this, Death by Metal. This demo literally has my favorite Death song from the first album, Evil Dead. Death's early demos were a little too raw for my taste, but when Mutilation came out in '86, featuring Chuck on vocals, I think they really came into their own production-wise and musically. The whole demo has a clear, crisp sound and a new sheen of consummate professionalism that really gives the songs a big boost. Camley did good on the first demos, but I think Chuck's vocals have a far more higher-pitched, fitting timbre.
Donald, can we just rate Scream Bloody Gore, which is the first actual album? Or have you read the title of this fucking video?
I'm not finished, Barack. The second demo's opening track, Corpse Grinder, is literally where Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse got his name from. These demos were so influential on the formation of death metal.
Yeah, I'm cutting you off there, Donald. We're going to be rating Scream Bloody Gore right now.
I'm supposed to be leading this tier list, Barack.
And you're supposed to be leading this country, too, and look how that's going.
Fuck you, Barack.
I'm doing the tier list, Joe. I gotta say the first album is pretty good musically, but the lyrics are edgy AF. Fucking raping zombie whores, really, Chuck? What are you, 13? Vomit for a mind, maggots for a cock? I celebrate a faggot's death? Jesus Christ, Evil Chuck, you're edgier than the early Norwegian black metal scene.
Yes, the lyrics are gross at times, but that's a central theme in death metal. Life isn't always pretty, Barack. This isn't pop music. And Chuck has apologized for that last line and has had openly gay bandmates since.
Bros, this album is B tier at best.
Remember, Chuck composed everything, handled the vocals, the bass, and all guitar parts. Some other guy is credited for rhythm guitar, but Chuck actually played everything.
Donald, you may not understand this, but we're rating albums here, not Chuck Schuldiner.
Exactly, Joe. I'd put this album in B tier, but I'll cut you some slack and put it in A tier, Donald, because the demos were influential, and a lot of the songs from this album come from them. But Possessed was still the first to release a death metal record.
Nonsense, Barack. It's just boring thrash.
The first demo is literally named Death Metal, and its first song is named Death Metal. The genre is death metal,
Complete
Donald.
bullshit, Barack. It's just thrash with a death metal sticker on it, just like the peace sticker on your Nobel Drone Strike Prize.
Guys, I'm taking over this fucking tier list. I don't give a fuck about demos or who invented death metal.
This isn't over, Barack.
We're gonna rate Leprosy next. I'm in love with the drums on this album. Bill Andrews absolutely kills it. So many good drum fills, and the overall sound is just so good.
What the fuck, Joe?
This whole album is so tight. Some of the best death songs are on here. Pull the Plug and Left to Die are amazing. The tempo changes, the drums, the pinch harmonics. Chuck's vocals are even better than on the first album. I could go on for hours.
Yeah, Donald, we noticed that in the Smash or Pass video.
Just ignore him, Donald. This album is going into S tier, but not before I mention that there's an amazing live recording of the band in this era. Check out this clip. Jamie, can we pull that up? Ooh, yeah, that's that good shit.
God damn, look at that mean, lean riffing machine of a man here. Joe, I'm going to need a Band-Aid because Chuck's jawline is so fucking sharp here, it's cutting me into pieces.
Still just gore and death lyrical themes on this album, though. At least they aren't as gross as on the first album. I'd consider putting this in A tier.
My only comment on this album is that I'm not a fan of Rick Roz's solos. They remind me too much of Kerry King. And for the uninformed viewer, that is not a good thing.
Chuck's solos are obviously better, but Rick Roz is still good. Pull the Plug solo slaps, Joe. And Open Casket was fully written by Rick.
No worries, Donnie. The album is still S tier. Let's move on. Next is Spiritual Healing from 1990. First thing I notice about this record is the wacky-ass album cover, so typical for 80s and 90s metal. Reminds me of For Whose Advantage by Zentrix and even Rust in Peace.
Yeah, Joe, this artwork is by Ed Repka, who also did Peace Cells and Rust in Peace. Dude illustrated a ton of classic thrash albums. For Death, he also did Scream, Bloody Gore, and Leprosy.
This album perfectly illustrated what a fucking perfectionist asshat Chuck was. Dude refused to tour Europe for this album at the last minute because he thought it was badly organized. His own band had to go on tour with a different vocalist just because Chuck's such a pain in the ass to work with. And then he had the nerve to actually be disgusted by them doing so, even though the band just wanted to fulfill their contractual obligations. Holy shit, this guy is second only to Dave Mustaine.
It just means he has standards, Barack, which you clearly don't. No offense, Michelle.
Guys, please just rate the album. I don't know why, but this album never caught me like Leprosy did. For whatever reason, they also recorded the whole thing in a motel room that they all stayed in together for like 6 weeks.
Bro, I can't even imagine recording for 6 hours with Chuck. Jesus Christ, no wonder he had a different lineup on almost every album.
At least this album finally shifts away from the gore lyrics. This shit actually covers societal issues, religion, and harnessing the power of your mind. That shit gets my juices flowing, bro.
I'm surprised you have juices left to flow, Sleepy Joe.
Fuck off, Donald. Leave Joey alone. And check out Within the Mind, where Chuck advocates for abortion. How about that, Donald?
There's always compromises to be made in a relationship, Barack.
Sure, Donald. That must be why you have such a history of healthy monogamous relationships.
Guys, I'm rating this shit by myself if you don't shut up. I'm thinking A tier. Despite the better lyrics, it just doesn't hit the spot like Leprosy does.
Agreed, Joe, but if we include Chuck's touring shenanigans, it's B tier at most.
Yeah, and I don't give a shit about that, Barack. If we include touring shenanigans, the whole Guns N' Roses discography is going into D tier, and I can't do that to Appetite for Destruction, bro.
Oh, look, that's another Barack Obama soundtrack.
Fine, Joe, A tier.
All right, now we come to Human, where shit gets really progressive. Chuck fired his whole band again for this album and signed up 2 dudes from Cynic, a progressive metal band. Just the opening drum solo is indicative of how crazy complex this album is.
Bro, this shit is the epitome of the word technical. Barack would drone strike it without hesitation.
Chuck actually drone striked his manager's contract after the last album, and then hired him again before the recording of this album. Just putting that out there.
I love the name of the opening track of this record, Flattening of Emotions. This shit describes my mental state perfectly.
This album perfectly describes nothing but janky, needlessly progressive bullshit. Just because something is complex doesn't mean it's good. Pointless wankery.
To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Death's more progressive albums. The riffs are extremely complex, and without a solid grasp of music theory, most of what makes this album great will go over a typical listener's head. There's also Chuck's progressive outlook on life itself, which is definitely woven into his lyrics. His personal philosophy draws heavily from Friedrich Nietzsche's literature.
Yeah, Donald, even the riffs have riffs, as they say. But I can relate to Barack. Complexity for the sake of complexity is pointless.
Just listen to the album, you dumb motherfuckers. Even if you don't understand the progressive genius, the songs are still bangers. Lack of comprehension even had MTV circulation, and that's the dumbest audience there is.
True, Donald. Even if I don't like the intro, it's a good song. Where do we put this album, though?
This is S tier.
This is obviously C tier.
It's going into A tier, but ahead of Spiritual Healing. I love Lack of Comprehension and the instrumental Cosmic Sea too much.
Still a fucking war crime, Kinky Joe.
Okay, moving on to what is allegedly the worst album, Individual Thought Patterns. This shit is the only album that has less than 80% on Metal Archives.
Yeah, this is the first one with Mean Gene, the atomic clock drumming machine. I love Dark Angel, but not this album.
This album doubles down on the progressiveness from the last album, and I love it. Fretless bass, only virtuosos allowed.
Honestly, this album is just tiring to listen to. I respect Death, and I won't rate this album D tier, but it's definitely even worse than Human, although The Philosopher slaps.
I can understand what you're saying, Barack. This is kind of like Chuck took all the rarest Lego minifigs and bricks, put them in a set, and thought it would be coherent. I'm a simple man. I just want cool, catchy riffs I can remember.
Exactly, Joe. C tier from me.
I've muted Donald, by the way. He's not going to be able to handle me putting this in B tier. My favorite tracks are Destiny and The Philosopher. It's not a bad album, but it's just not up there with the other ones. Donald, I'm unmuting you.
Bro, the nerve to fucking mute me. Put the last album in A tier at least.
I'll let him cool off a little longer. Next is Symbolic, and S is for Symbolic. Donald, I've just said I'm putting a Death album in S tier. Are you a happy boy again now? Who's a happy boy?
At least Symbolic gets the recognition it deserves.
Gotta agree with you here, Joe. Symbolic is peak Death for me.
Everything's good here. The production, the vocals, the lyrics. Mean Gene is back. It's just straight on fleek.
On fleek hasn't been cool for a couple of years, Joe.
Whatever, this album high-key slaps.
Just stop trying, bro.
Are we going to discuss the actual songs or what?
No need, Donald. Even if the album only had Symbolic without Judgment and Crystal Mountain on it, this shit would still be top tier. I'm putting it in Symbolic tier. Finally, and we're at the end of this tier list.
Can't believe this is the first time we've ranked more than 5 albums in a single video. Is this what being an adult feels like?
Bombing 7 different countries didn't make you feel like an adult, Barack?
Nah, Shit's just like Call of Duty, bro.
Keep it together, boys. Sound of Perseverance is the last album.
Why aren't we ranking the Control Denied album?
Donald, I just want to get this over with. I'm fucking exhausted listening to 7 Death albums straight. Oh, and I know you can go for hours with Chuck, but that doesn't mean everyone can.
You never were able to go for hours, Joe.
Whatever you say, Donald, this album is pretty good, but I got some comments here. In my opinion, these are the best vocals ever from Chuck. There's tons of cool riffs. And there is a Judas Priest cover on here, but what the fuck? Why did he change the lyrics of Painkiller? Why is there a spider coming out of the sky instead of a savior? Shit gives me nightmares, bro.
This album's got that Schuldiner syndrome again, a step back from symbolic if you ask me. The songs are too unstructured and complex, but Voice of the Soul is good.
Voice of the Soul is so powerful. The best instrumental in the history of instrumentals, maybe ever.
Yeah, it's really good, and there's just so many good songs on here. Spirit Crusher is amazing. Flesh and the Power It Holds is amazing. I can't get over these vocals. Fuck you guys, I'm putting this in S tier. Later, homies.
I can't complain, I guess. What do I do now?
Whatever, I'm so fucking glad we're finally done.
Barack, you sure you don't want to rate the Control Denied album?
Can't believe I forgot this, but R.I.P. Chuck.
I was joining Michelle for dinner, Joe. Why did you call me again?
We forgot to pay respects to Chuck.
Oh, right. My bad, boys. R.I.P. He died too soon.
Thanks for this, guys. Now, I remember why I secretly love you two a little bit. And I love you too, viewer. Don't worry. If you subscribe. Oh, and I have another little factoid for you, viewer. Chuck had Tim Amar audition as the vocalist for Control Denied, but lost his number. So he mentioned that in the liner notes of this album. And they got in touch again after. Isn't that amazing? This is super interesting, right? Right? Surely you must be as interested in my metal history hobby as I am. Right? Guys. Why does nobody like me?